when I was doing my PhD, I mainly focused on transnationalism, but I've got broader research interests in transnational families, left behind children, migration governance, displacement, and refugees. Broadly, those are my research interests, and with a specific focus on gender as well. Okay, with the onset of COVID-19, what has happened is, particularly when you look at undocumented migrants from Zimbabwe in South Africa, they've always been living and working under precarious conditions. But with the onset of COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdowns, what has happened is this has heightened their precarities in terms of loss of jobs, loss of accommodation, financial losses, as well as failure to access, health and other social services in the receiving countries. So it's really an issue of heightened precarities for Zimbabwean migrants in South Africa, as well as heightened xenophobic attitudes at official level, as well as at in the public discourses, because everybody has been losing jobs. I mean, whether you're citizens or not. So what has happened is there's been an increase in terms of anti-immigrant sentiments towards migrants from Zimbabwe and South Africa, with many of them remaining stuck in South Africa, and others choosing to return on a voluntary basis because they basically cannot meet their basic needs. So far, I think we're looking at about 200,000 returnees officially recorded by International Organization for Migration, but much more that have come through the system but not recorded. Without disregarding the effects of the pandemic at global, at national level, but it appears to have presented an opportunity to officials in South Africa, to the government, to the state, to be more nationalistic in terms of their migration governance and outlook, particularly towards Zimbabweans. We've seen heightened nationalism under the guise of the pandemic. We've seen at official level the government committing tremendous resources to monitor the routes that are used by migrants, particularly the Limpopo River in South Africa, where normally that is the route that is used by undocumented migrants. They've committed a helicopter, they've committed dinghies and drones to monitor that area under the guise of, not spreading the pandemic. We've seen the erection of commitment of resources in millions towards the erection of a fence between Zimbabwe and South Africa, because migrants are particularly labeled as a public health threat. And we've seen official statements from ministers where they are now talking of post-pandemic outlooks. They advocating for employment of South Africans rather than Zimbabweans in restaurants, or rather than, let me say, foreigners, not Zimbabweans. We've seen them hashtags being, popularized particularly on Twitter, which push for the anti-immigrant sentiment, like Zimbabweans must go back home, Zimbabweans must leave South Africa. And so in a nutshell, I would say it's been about heightened nationalism, and the pandemic is real, but it has presented an opportunity at official level, even in public discourses, for people to push an agenda of exclusion and xenophobia against migrants, against foreigners, in particular Zimbabweans.